I'm going to add this feature brick wall just around here. You'll see in front of the living room glazing, there seems to be like a protruding feature wall, which we're just going to draw as a single brick wall. And then you'll see that that brick changes color, and you've got this entranceway here, the porch, where you have this sort of parapet roof up here with two columns either side, one that's sort of built into the wall and one that is freestanding. So when we go into our Revit model, I'm going to go start off in our floor plan, and I'm going to start with drawing a new type of wall. We need to create a new type of wall. So I'm just going to go to my wall tool, and we're going to edit type. And I'm going to go down to our double brick wall. It's probably the closest thing we have. So I'll take our double brick wall, which is just here, wall type 3. And I'm going to duplicate that. And we're just going to get rid of everything else. Like so. So it's just going to be, this will be wall type 5 now. Wall type 5 will be 110 mil wide. And it's going to be created with just 110 mil brick, nothing more, nothing less. So I'll say okay, and then we'll duplicate, we'll go to edit, we'll edit that structure. So I'll bring this over here. And so we're going to get rid of one of these structural layers. So to do that, I click on the number that I want to get rid of, and then click on delete here. And then the thermal air gap, I'll get rid of that as well. And then as for the material, I'm just going to click on this here and give this a new material. We're going to clean up these materials shortly, but just for now, I'm going to right click on it and say duplicate. And I'm just going to call this, just for now, I'll just call it black brick. And I'm going to change that color. 40, 40, 40. So now it's a darker brick wall, and I'll leave it at that. But like I said, we're going to come back and clean up our wall types and our bricks shortly. So that's all good to go. No other metadata added just yet. Alright, so let's start drawing. So I'm going to take this from the ground floor, finish face exterior, ground floor up to the ceiling level. I'm going to say up to level 1. Remember that these parameters here I can also adjust up here in the green bar in the ribbon. It's the same thing. So I'm going to start off with just drawing from here, flipping that over, and just coming over to here somewhere. Doesn't really matter where. And then I'm going to draw here like so. In fact, I might just drag this back, and I'll disallow the join, unjoin. And what I'm going to do is I've got this wall here now, and I've got these two walls here, or this like U shape. I'm going to quickly draw up this wall as well, just going around clockwise. And you can see at the moment I don't really care what size this is, and I'll just trim that off because we'll dimension that. But just quickly, I want to make sure that I disallow these joints. So I'm going to click on this wall here, and then on the little blue grip, I'm going to right click on that and then say disallow join. What that means is when I drag that wall up to here, you'll have a definitive, you'll have this line which defines that. In fact, I'll just hide the image behind. So you have this line here that defines that one wall ends and the other one begins. If I don't have that, if I don't disallow the join, what will happen? If I just drag that in there, you can see it sort of like meshes the wall together, and we'll drag this wall and meet it with the structural element of the next wall, which is, of course, the timber structure. So you end up with this weird looking graphical situation, which is not right. So like I said, you click on the wall, you right click on the little blue grip, and then you say disallow join, and you know when it's disallowed because you'll get this little T section that comes up, which if you click on it will then re-allow that join. So I'm just going to drag that now back to the face. That looks right. And I'll do the same thing here, disallow join, and drag that up. But the rest of these doesn't actually matter. This wall and this wall, they're free to join because they're the same type of wall anyway, so that's fine. Alright, and then next up, this doesn't matter at all because it's a freestanding column. But what I am going to do is just quickly dimension these up. Yep, that's fine. Now I'm going to click on this, 540, that's fine. These ones I'm going to make 540. And I want this wall here to be in alignment with this garage wall just here, or the entrance wall. So I'll go to my line tool, AL, click on that garage wall, and then click on the column. And then I need to click on this wall here because I want to move it, and I want it to be 540. So that comes back. And then same here, I want these two walls to be in a line, and I want that to be 540 as well. So I'll go to here, I'll then click on this and say that's 540. And then align the face of this column and that column. And then click on this wall to move that back 540. There we go. That's better. That's all aligned. So if I go to my 3D, you'll see there's the black brick there on the face, on the facade face. And then we're going to edit this profile now as well. So what I'm going to do is, you can do this with any wall, and it's just a new technique. So we can click on the wall, and then in the ribbon, in the modify ribbon, we can click on edit profile. And we do that, we get this, these magenta lines that appear. And we can draw anything into that. We could just draw, I could draw like a hexagon in the middle like that, click OK, and you'll end up with like essentially a hexagon opening. But more commonly, I mean, you can use that tool if you like, but more commonly it's just to adjust the profile of the wall itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pick lines tool and then offset, and I'm going to offset 540, and I'm going to click on this line over here. So you end up with something that looks like this. And then what I'm going to do is just draw another line going across from there to there. I don't care what height that is right now, but what I'll do is I'll click on that line, and a quick dimension is going to come up just here. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to change that to 2.5 meters, like so. So you'll see I'm going to trim that up now because it needs to be one continuous closed line. So I'll go from there to there, there to there, and there to there. So I've got like a sort of an L-shapey looking thing. And that's 540 wide, and that is 2.5 meters high from this point to the finished floor level, or to the ground floor. I'll say okay. And you'll end up with something that looks like this. And you'll see when in Photoshop how that now relates. That's what gives us this L shape here. Alright, so now we need to do the infill over here and around the other side as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to my floor plan. And I'm going to take this wall, and I'm going to go WA for wall. And I'm just going to draw across like that and join those two together. And I'm going to do the same thing here. But I'm going to stop short. And the reason why I'm going to stop short is because I want to click on that wall, right click on the grip, and say disallow join before then dragging that to the wall to make sure those two walls aren't connected. I'm then going to go to my 3D view. I could do this in 2D as well. I'm going to pick that wall and that wall. And in the properties window, I'm going to say that the base constraint is at the ground floor, but I want you to start the base offset at 2.5 meters up. So you'll end up with something that looks like this. So that's how you get that opening consistent between this wall here and this wall here. Okay. Another thing too you'll notice is that because I drew that wall, it just connected to that side of the column. So it's dragged that up. So I need to do one more thing. Go back to ground floor. And I'm going to drag this away like that and unjoin it. And I need to do the same thing again. Right click and say disallow join. Drag that to here. And then create another wall. Like that. So this wall stands completely. Otherwise, because it joins to this wall, if I move that wall up, it takes that side of the column with it as well. So now I can do that again. And there we are. Okay, so that's our feature wall now drawn. Oh, I better do that for this one too. All right. Let's just go back now and clean up some of these walls and their materials. And I'm personally going to align them to the material finish inside of Photoshop. Inside of our reference. So I'm going to create like a beige brick. That dark brick is now worked. And also just clean up our timber material and our tile material. And I'm also going to start classifying and naming my materials in some sort of consistent manner that we can schedule them later on in this project. So go back to Revit, and I'm going to open up this brick wall. So WT03 and say edit. And so the wall type name is irrespective of what the materials are. The wall type or the type of family has no bearing or relationship to the material. So I'm going to go into edit structure, and now I've got my materials and the associated thicknesses to those materials. So at the moment we just have masonry, brick, brown. It's pretty generic. We want to be more specific. So I'm going to right click on this and say rename, and I'm going to start giving them a common coding system. So I'm going to go BRK01, and what that's going to mean is that every time you see BRK01, that's brick 1 or brick type 1, and I'm going to do underscore, and then I'm just going to say brick. I think for now I'm just going to leave that a brick, and then I might just say brick light finish. You can name it however you like, but the reason why I'm doing that is because you may end up changing. I'm going to just leave that at brick. I'm just going to leave it BRK01 brick. And the reason why I'm doing that is because BRK1 at the moment is like a beigey brick, but your client may turn around later and say, actually, I want it to be like a really reddish or like a pink brick or something like that. You can just go in here and change the color of that brick without changing the name, and that way you can keep the code. So for instance, at the moment, BRK is like a brown, is like a beige brick, but then the client might change and BRK now becomes like a gray brick. And if I keep updating the name there, I mean, I can do it, but I really avoid using brands. That's probably the biggest one there, is I would avoid using a selection right now. Later on, yes, but right now, no. So I'm just going to change that finish. I'm going to make that a bit more of a beigey sort of color. And I'm just going to I'm just eyeballing it. That's sort of beigey. I'm still happy with the rest of that. So I'll say okay. And it looks like nothing's really changed, and that's fine. And then they're both BR. Yep, that's fine. And I'll say okay. And then okay again. And you'll see that brick is now updated to that color, which is close. I'm probably a little bit far away. Well, actually, I'm pretty far away. So let's go back in there and just edit that again. And the point is that you can continue to do this. You don't have to. It's not like a set and forget. That might be a little bit better, actually. You can continue to update this as we go along. We're editing our brick veneer wall now. I forgot to mention that. So we're editing the brick veneer, not our double brick. But it actually doesn't matter because that same material is applied to the double brick wall as well. They're using the same. They're using the same brick material, so it will apply both ways. So let's go to our darker brick that we were using, and I'll say edit type. At the moment, we just have black brick. And I can then rename this. I can go rename. And we call this one BRK02. And I can still call this brick if I want. Or I can just say brick darker or black brick or whatever it may be. So that's fine. I've renamed that. So you'll see now it's starting to, I've got like some sort of naming structure going on. And then when we get later into the project, when we go more closer to a selection that we actually like, we'll then put all that metadata in here, and then we can schedule that out when we start doing material schedules. Okay, so that's fine. That's good. And let's continue on. So let's go to our timber cladding, and I'm going to go edit type and edit structure, and we have timber cladding currently, which we named in the last class. And let's right click on that and go rename, and we'll call this one TCL, timber cladding 01, and I'll just go timber cladding. And that material is fine, the pattern is fine. Now, I'm not sure if it may have happened to you or not, but you might have the material might be in a vertical direction. Now, if that happens, you do have selections of horizontal and vertical model hatches, but if you don't, you can create a new one simply by duplicating this current fill pattern and then just calling it vertical instead, or horizontal if it's the other way around. And that's basically it. All you got to do is just change the line angle to 90 degrees. And now you got 300 mil apart at 90 degrees. As an example, you say okay. And then that's now the new hatch that you've selected for this material if you go down that path. But I'm going to keep mine at 300 mil horizontal. Okay, that's all good. So you see now TCL, timber cladding type 1. That's fine. The substrate is still timber. Now, it doesn't really matter too much, these structural materials. You can give them a naming if you like, but you don't normally schedule out. Like, you don't schedule out like your concrete. You don't schedule out your timber stud, like your timber stud walls, or even like your tongue and groove. You don't normally do that. It's more of a finishes, your finishes palettes that are tagged. But it's up to you. If you want to use that, if you want to give your normal structural materials a coding system, it would be smart, but it's not compulsory. Same with plaster. In fact, plasterboard, sometimes it does, but mostly you are tagging the finishes on the plasterboard, i.e. like a wallpaper or a timber cladding or I don't know, a white paint. You don't normally schedule out the plasterboard itself. The other thing too is we're going to just adjust this structural size of these walls. So I'm going to change the timber cladding to an 18 mil timber cladding, but I'm going to shrink down the size of the substrate down to 20 mil. So it's a smaller batten, but a larger timber cladding zone. So it looks something like that. Now, this is going to update the model live, and I'm just going to say okay. Delete element. And then okay, and now those walls have updated accordingly. So if I go to level 1, I now know that these walls represent the correct sizes. All right. Yep, nice. Okay. So that now works, and it's really these external walls I care about. Yep, that looks good. Okay. Now, we'll continue on with our material naming. So I'm going to go back to here, and I'm just going to clean up our roof. So I'm going to go edit. And in this case, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to give it the correct naming as well. Because the reason why I'm doing this is because unlike a wall is generally made up of more than one type of material or structure. So with even a plasterboard wall, we call it, wall type 2, and it's plasterboard, timber, stud, plasterboard. But there's two plasterboards on either side can have opposing materials. One might have a timber cladding stuck to it, and the other one might have a white paint on it. But with a roof material like this, it's generally, because in Revit, the roof zone, at least in residential like this, we're just doing the roof tile. So it's just a finish. So giving it its code is probably a smart idea. So I'm going to go tile RF for roof 01. And I'll say roof, so I'd say 30 mil roof tile. And then go to edit, and then let's just name this appropriately as well. So right click, duplicate, tile, roof, should be in. Roof tile. I don't need to change anything else. That's fine for now. And okay. So now we click on that. We've got a little bit more metadata. So we know it's roof tile type 1, 30 mil roof tile. And the others now I've updated as well because it's type based. And let's do the same thing for our gutter. So our gutter and our fascia board, let's do that. So I'll click on the gutter, and then I'll go edit type, and then we'll change that material here. And for this, at the moment, it will go to my last material, but we're going to create a new material. So I'm going to come down to the little ball and with the plus button and click on that. And I'm just going to call this create new material and go rename. I'm just going to call this one COL01 color bond 1. And I'll just call this color bond dark finish. We'll find a name for it later on when we actually get closer to our material selection, or you might end up changing this to another type of finish. So I want to find that. There it is there. I'm going to make that dark material as well. So 40, 40, 40. And I don't need to add anything else right now. That at the moment is more than enough. Okay. Yep, and then I'll give the fascia board that same material. So fascia board, and then edit type, and then it will remember that material there. Okay, okay, and that will update. Yep, it has, and around the garage it has as well. And then the underside here, this cement sheeting, I'm just going to make sure that that's got an appropriate material. So structure, okay, it hasn't got one, so we'll give it a new one. And I'll go edit type, new material, right click, name. Now, this doesn't normally, like a soffit lining or an eave lining doesn't normally have a material code either. It's usually painted in something, so the finish would be given a code, not necessarily a material. So here I'm just going to call it cement sheet and give it a white finish. Okay, yep, that's now got a white finish. So a quick disclaimer on materials and coding and whatnot. So whether it be naming structures in general, so whether it be the way that floors, finishes, materials, paints, structural materials, even wall types, door naming, any of these things, they are very specific from firm to firm. And then sometimes they're even specific from project to project. So the methodology that I'm teaching here is just one of a myriad of ways to do it. You can come up with a structure and a system yourself that works for you, particularly as you progress in this course, or you may want to adopt one that I'm using here, or that you may learn in working drawings, or eventually you'll end up adopting the one that's in the practice that you work for. It's vast and wide. Like I said, project to project it changes, and generally across the course of that project you'll remember what each of these codes are and they'll make logical sense for you. But just know there is no hard and fast rule about the way that any of these systems are codified or named. I'm going to spend some more time now modeling concrete structure, in particular the brick veneer slab edge. And also inner concrete beams as well. So, and there is quite a few different ways and methodologies to go about modeling this, and I'm going to show you two different methods. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go to my 3D view, and I'm going to just select my floors. So I'm going to click on this floor here and this floor here, and then isolate them by going HI on my keyboard. So I have my garage set down slab, and I've got my house slab here. Now, we've been very careful to draw this slab inside, basically meeting the edge of the timber stud wall. So if you can imagine, the timber stud of the brick veneer would actually be meeting the outside edge, right at the very edge or the perimeter of this slab here, whether the brick veneer sits on top of this slab on the garage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to floor, and then click on the drop down box underneath floor and the ribbon, and then click on slab edge. Now the way this works is very much like how it works with gutters and fascia boards. These are elements that are essentially swept and hosted to an element. In this particular case, it has to be hosted to floors, and it works like sweep inside of Rhino. So you have a profile, and you then select the edges that profile is going to follow, and then it sweeps that profile along the path. So at the moment there's one by default just called slab edge, and if I click on edit type, at the moment it's just a M_slab edge thickened 600 by 300 mil. I don't know what that is, it's just a generic type, but you know, because it's a profile, I could select anything. Like I can select the gutter, or I could select the box gutter and sweep that essentially around the perimeter of my floor. Again, Revit doesn't really care what you choose to sweep. If it's a profile, if it's a 2D profile, Revit will sweep it. Whether you do it as a floor slab or whether you do it as a gutter, it doesn't actually matter. So let's just stick with the generic one for now. I'll click OK and then just start clicking away. So if I click the top of the slab, it will host it from that point downwards. But if I click on the lower edge of the slab, it will host it from that point downwards. And that's why you get this jump in the height of those two slab edges. If I continue to pick that height though, it blends them together and cuts them together, and you'll see on the underside, it does a really good job of miting those slab edges together. Now, problem with this though is that this is not right. This is not how we do slab edges, particularly for a brick veneer. This will work fine for the garage, but not so much here. And even in the garage, we want to change this profile up. So I'll hit escape, I'll click on that slab edge, and then I'll delete it. What we're going to do is create a new profile family, and this is very similar to the way we did with the gutter and with the box gutter. So I'm going to go up to File, New, Family, and then just find Profile, and click OK. So the first thing to note with the brick veneer profile is that this intersecting line here is the slab edge, and remember that is our line that would be our timber stud wall. So I'm just going to grab a line. Well, actually, first thing I'm going to do is going to do some reference planes. So RP for reference plane. One there. One, if I can do it straight. One over here. One down here. And then I'm going to do one here. That's fine. Okay, so from this point to this point, I want this to be 150. From that point to that point, I want this to be 350. And if that's not long enough, I'll just click on the reference plane and drag that down. Same with this one here. From here to here, I want that to be 325. And I want that to be 125. Alright, so what I'll do now, and one more actually, I'm just going to draw there. And I want that to be 350. Okay, perfect. Alright, so what I'll do now is just grab my pen. So I'll go create, line, and I just start drawing. So I'm just going to start tracing over this. And it'll look something like that. That's all it is, just a two-dimensional line, like so. So what I'm going to do now is that should probably be smaller actually. It should be 125. That should be 45 degrees, which I think it is now. So I can get rid of that. I'll just double check that that is 45. Yep. Excellent. Alright, so I'm now going to file and save this. So I'm going to save as, family. Now I'm going to find today's class, class 3, slab edges, brick veneer. So I'm going to go PR_slab edge brick veneer because I may want to do other slab edges at a later stage. So I'll say okay, save over. Yep, I'll save over mine, but you'll save it as a new file. And then I'll go load into project and I'm going to load it into today's class. Say okay, and it looks like nothing's happened. So I'm going to go back to my 3D where I just have those slab edges. I'm going to go back to floor, create slab edge, and then in here I'm going to go edit type. And because I'm going to have two types of slab edges, I need to make sure I've got two available. So I'll go duplicate, and I'm just going to call this one brick veneer slab edge, or actually I'm going to say slab edge underscore brick veneer. And then underneath the profile, I'm going to make sure I choose that right profile, which there it is there, PR_slab edge. Click on that, say okay, and now I'm going to start clicking away. So I'm going to hold my mouse button, hold my mouse or my cursor on the lower edge of my ground floor slab. Hit tab so it selects the entire perimeter, and then click. And that's now done. That looks pretty good to me. And now we have our slab, our step down in our slab, and it looks like so. Okay, but then around the garage area, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done here to clean this up. So we can just click on these grips here, and I can drag segments, and they'll snap as well to certain points. So I'm going to snap that back to the start of the garage slab, and this one here, I'm actually going to remove that segment on the inner side of that slab because that's going to have a different edge. So I'm going to click on the slab edge, then in the modified ribbon, click on add remove segments, and then click on that line there, and that removes just that portion of the slab edge, and you can see that now like that. So it looks something like that. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my family that I was in, this one here, and what I'm going to do this time is essentially take all of this, and move it over the 150 mil. So it looks like this. Okay, so now there isn't that slab edge. So there's two ways you can do it. You could do that like that, or if I come back to the 3D, you'll notice that this has a horizontal and vertical profile offset, just like the roof sweeps do as well, like the gutter and fascia board. So I could, if I wanted to, I could keep using this same profile and say the horizontal offset will be minus 150, and that will, oops, it should be the other way, sorry, 150 inwards, and that makes it flush with the end of the slab. You can do that too. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Personally, I find it better to make sure I've got two different profiles and they're just set up by default at the right location with a vertical and a horizontal offset of 0 and 0. This may not seem like much for a house, but particularly when you start getting into like commercial construction and whatnot, you'll have many, many different profiles for different types of treatments, slab thicknesses and different beam thicknesses and whatnot, and you just want to make life as easy as possible for you. So I'm going to go back to here. That looks good to me. I'm going to go File, Save As. Important to go Save As because this is a new type of profile. So this time, instead of slab edge brick veneer, I'm just going to say double brick. Options 1, okay. And then load that back into the project. Again, nothing happens. Go back to the 3D. And this time I'm going to go to my floor slab edge. And this time I'm going to pick the other one that just said slab edge here. I'm going to rename this, make sure it's consistent, and go slab edge underscore double brick and update that as well. So go down to, there it is, double brick, okay, and now start clicking away. So go around my garage slab, same deal, around the whole perimeter, bang, there we go. That looks much better. And of course that slab edge is going to be deeper than the house because the slab itself is sitting, in this case, 100 mil underneath the floor level. So it looks like that. Now, I'm going to go back to my ground floor and I'm just going to click on this section here. So you should have a section going through your building. And by the way, if you don't, very easy to do, just quickly, up at the very highest ribbon of Revit, you've got the little section tool here. Just click and draw across once. It doesn't really matter where on your drawing, and then you just double click on the section head. Very important, you click on the blue area, double click on that, and that opens up a section of your drawing. Now the reason why I'm doing that is I just want to make sure that it looks something like this. And I'll change this to fine mode. Okay. So the reason why I did that is I changed that to fine mode is because I want to see whether I've got this line here, and this will drive you mental when you have this line appearing like this. And the reason why is because the material between here and the material on the slab edge are probably not the same or not even applied. All right, so I'm going to make sure I have a material. So I'm going to click on my slab, go edit type, and let's clean up the name for this as well. I'm going to call this one 100 underscore concrete slab. So that's my floor type, and then I'll go edit. And at the moment there's no material, so I'll give that material. So let's find concrete. There's probably a ton of different ones in here. So I'm just going to go concrete cast in situ. That's fine. That doesn't matter because that's just a generic type of concrete. So I'll say okay, and then okay, and okay again. Now I've got that hatch appearing here. In fact, I'll just change the scale so it appears a bit better. So there's that hatch appearing here. I'm going to click on the slab edge, go edit type, and then also give it that same concrete material. It has to be the same material. So okay, okay, and you'll see now that line disappears and you've got like this consistent hatch. If I choose a different type of concrete, it's going to show that line. Okay, so over this one, I need to do that as well over here because it's a different type of slab edge, but still has the same type of concrete cast in situ. And that's okay. All right, that's done. So that's our slab edge done using the slab edge tool. Next up, we'll take a look at doing slab edges, or sorry, doing thickening beams inside of slabs, or they're sometimes known as thickening beams or just concrete beams, and that's going to be using the structural beam tool inside of under the structural tab. Before we finish up on slab edges, I just wanted to show you a couple of examples of the potential of using slab edges for more unique profiles rather than just slab edges like brick veneer slab edges. So this is, I've used the same slab twice, which is just a rectangle with 2 filleted edges and 2 right angles. And you can see here this profile is a little bit more organic in its underside, and then fillets around with a nice edge, and then even has like a hob, or what you would call a hob here, between an external area and like a balcony or an overhang area. And you can see that Revit does a really good job of sweeping that around, giving you quite an organic finish. And that's, you know, that's a good opportunity if you're just going floor to floor to floor. You do a couple of these over the top of each other, it looks pretty cool. It will give you a pretty nice looking sort of facade finish. This one over here, I'm going to just remove this back edge here. So I'll click on the slab edge, add remove segments, and then I'm going to remove this side here. Oops. I want to get rid of that. I keep adding it. Oops, I'll just do this. Okay, so this is quite a complex slab edge here, where I've got my slab here, and then I have like a thickening beam that sort of comes a little bit in, then protrudes out. I've got like an overhang lip at the bottom, and then even an overhang lip at the top here before it comes back up to the slab. And that might be somewhere where you would mount like a railing of some sort, or a balustrade. And you know, graphically, just so you know, graphically you end up with a look like this, but they are the same material, so they'll appear just like in our other model in our project, that they'll clean up really nicely around the edges like so. But they just give you a bit of an example of thinking outside the box, or using slab edges for other methods rather than just brick veneer edge beams. Before I model our concrete beams, I'm just going to go to ground floor, and I'm going to select everything in this view. Doesn't really matter which way I select it, and I'm going to come up to here in the modify panel, modify ribbon, where it says filter, and there's also another filter icon in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, also with the count of items I've selected, which in this case 82 items. I'm going to come up to here, click on filter, and then in here I can tick and untick items that I do and don't want. So I'm going to say check none by default, and say I want to have the floors, and I'd like to have reference planes, and I'll click OK. And then I'm going to go HI in the keyboard to isolate those elements. So now I just have my floors and I just have my reference planes. Now remember to end temporarily isolating elements. I go HR on my keyboard and it brings everything back. Now I'm going to do that one more time, but before I do that, I'm going to create a couple of reference planes. And I'm going to create one near this staircase here. So one there. And I'm going to go to the center of the wall. I'm going to create one there. And in fact, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make sure that's in the center of my wall. So I'll delete that reference plane. I'll create another. Just hover over the center of that wall. Like so. That's fine. And then I'm going to make one along here, the center of this wall. And then just go down like so. And I'll click on that and just make that a bit bigger. Alright, so let's do that again. Select all, filter, check none, and take my slab edges, my floors, and my reference planes, and click OK, and then HI. Okay, so the reason why I've done that is because these two reference planes here, they're going to be used for my internal slab beams, my concrete beams, and then this one here will also be a concrete beam. So I'm going to go up to my structure tab and then click on beam. And when I do that, you're going to see that I only really have one beam to choose at the start. So I'm going to go up to the modify ribbon and then click on load family. And that should open up to the family library that's available in Revit by default. I'm going to scroll down to where it says structural framing. And then I'm going to click on the concrete folder. And then I have a couple of options. I've just got a rectangular beam, a joist with ledges, and also a pan joist, which is like an angular beam. I'm just going to click on the rectangular beam and say open. And you'll see that my file updates. At the moment, this is a 400 by 800 beam, so that's a big boy. What I'm going to do is then choose the placement level, which is ground floor at this point. And I'm just going to draw from one end to the other end. So I'll start from here and go to the other end, and it looks like nothing has happened. I'll get this warning saying none of the elements created in the view are visible within this view, and that is probably the case because it's an architectural floor plan and we're seeing structural elements. But right now, I'm not too concerned about that. I'll hit escape once, and then I'll hit escape twice, and I'm going to go back to my 3D view, and I can see that beam now drawn here, and it's sitting like at the same height as my floor slab. So the first thing to do is we need to, more than anything, we need to edit this profile first because we're not going to use a rectangular beam. So I'm going to click on Edit Family, and it's going to open up that structural member like so. And I'm going to click on the beam, and I'm going to say Edit Sweep because that's what these are. These are sweeps. These are families. And then click on the rectangle, and then double click on that. Whoops. And I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to edit this by sketch. So we're going to make our own. We're going to make our own beam. So by default, when I click on that, this profile is actually a predetermined profile that's loaded in, which is fine. That's all good. But we can then turn around and say, actually, I want to make this by sketch. I'm going to load this in by sketch. So I'm going to click on that and go to the views and go to an elevation and go to a front view. No, we need to go to a left view. Okay, perfect. Now you'll see there's all these dimensions in here by default, and that's fine. But we're just going to do a generic beam, so I don't really care for all these different parameters in here. So I'm going to say edit profile, and we can start drawing. So I'm just going to hover over the top. I'm going to go across here and then come down to here. I'm just going to follow these lines around, but a few key differences I'm going to make is I'm going to come down, I'm going to go out 125 and then come in at a 45-degree angle, and then I'm just going to mirror that on the other side. So to mirror, I'm going to select both those icons, go DM on my keyboard, draw mirror, click the midpoint, and then drag up on the screen. So I get something like this, and then use my trim tool. Keep those two, keep those two. Okay, and then I'm going to change this height to 350. Okay, and what's the width? 300. Okay, so I need to do a little bit more here. I need to take these. I'm going to move that out 25 mil. And I'll take this and move that out 25 mil. So it looks something like that. I'm going to click OK. And then click OK again. And that's what I've come up with. Now, I'm going to, can I delete these? Can I delete the reference planes? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to delete that reference plane. Keep that one. Delete some of these because we don't need them. Okay, I'm just going to take this profile, click on that, and drag that down to here. Okay, now the reason why I've done that is because what this means is, the reason why there's a reference level in this family is because beams can be drawn from the center of the beam, or sometimes they're drawn from the top of the beam or the underside of the beam. And at this point here, because we've moved this down to here, wherever we draw this, the top of the beam will be relative to the level that it's drawn to. So it'll be from the ground floor downwards. If it was up, it'd be from the ground floor upwards, as an example. Okay, so that's now done. I'm going to save this as a new type. So I'm going to go save as family, and then I'm going to go out to just to my folder, and I'm just going to call this one, this would be structural framing. So I'm going to go structural beam, so SB underscore 350 millimeter, or 350 by 350 millimeter concrete beam. Save one, okay, okay, and then load this into the project, which is today's class, and nothing will really happen. That's fine. But what I will do is go back to my 3D and then click on this beam, and let's change this one over. So there's our new beam for today. There we are there. And it is equal to the top of my slab, as we said. That's fine. So I'm going to say the start offset is going to be minus 100 because it's got to go under the slab. But you'll see there's a start offset and an end offset. So actually, I'll exaggerate. So if I go like 350 up, you'll end up with a beam that's on an angle. Because remember, this could be a steel beam as well, like structural framing. in this case just concrete. So I'll say -100 and the end is -100. You can also give it a cross-sectional rotation. So if I put in 45, it ends up turning it on a 45-degree angle. Again, we're not trying to do that. I'll leave that at 0. It looks like that. We can't see it. That's fine. But if I click on the slab, you'll see it join there. So I'll end up with something that looks like this. And then I'm going to make sure I click on that beam. Say edit type. I need to make sure that I rename the type to be the same one. So 350 by 350 millimeter. And where's the material? So okay, the material is an instance parameter. So just by clicking on that one beam, I can change the structural material to concrete cast in situ. This one here, this is the same one. Notice that so this one was concrete cast in place grey, and you could see it didn't join the other beams. So make sure it's the same material. Click OK. Alright, that's fine. And let's go, can I join those together? Let's just see, join this and this. Yes, there we go. So what I did there is I just went to the underside of the view. In fact, before I do that, let's just draw the other beam. So I'm going to go ground floor. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to change this to wireframe mode so we can see through. And we still can't see that beam. So what we need to do is I'm going to go visibility graphics. So I'm going to go VG on my keyboard. And we haven't gone through this yet in any great detail, so that's okay. Just follow along with me for the time being. I'm going to come down to, I need to change it to structural. Okay, I can see structural framing. Okay, so that's fine. Just click OK. Then in that case, I think it's because we haven't, it's isolated, so we haven't seen it, but that's okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to grab another beam. I'm going to go architecture, beam. There's our beam there. And I'm just going to draw once from here across. Can't see anything, that's fine. Hit escape, do the same thing again, once across. Can't see anything, that's fine because it's hidden in view, that's fine. And I'll go back to my 3D. And I've got something that looks like this now. And I'll just make sure I move these two beams. Firstly, make sure I give them the right material because it's an instance parameter, so it's a bit different. It's going to keep updating. It's going to go back to the default every time, unless I was to select them all. Cast in situ, that's fine, and then drop them both down. So -100 at the start, -100 at the end. So you end up with something that looks like this. And the beams will automatically join by default, but they won't join to a slab edge because it's a different category of Revit family. So what I'll do now is I'll go to the Modify tab, nothing selected, I click on the Modify tab, then I say Join, and I go join the slab edge with this beam, join the slab edge with that beam, and you can see now they're nice and clean, and join this slab edge with that beam as well. Alright, so that's how we do our slabs and our slab beams or our concrete beams inside of our slab, like so. And if I go back to our floor plan, I'll bring all this back and then go to a section. And so when we're in our section, we can see that we still have that line between the two, and that's because the last job is to finally join the beam to the slab itself. And when we do that, we end up with that nice looking mold like so. So we have much more of a realistic example of how these beams and slabs are connected. And just to make sure, I'm going to make sure I do that with the other beams too. So click on the beam and then go to the slab, join them together. And then again, join the slab to that beam, happy days. Okay, so now that's all good to go. When I unhide the rest of the model, I can see that a few things are not quite right now. So the garage walls are floating in midair, essentially. And with those, with the brick veneer slab edge created, I can see that my brick veneer wall is also floating in midair, which is kind of right because you have you've got the timber stud wall sits on the surface of the slab. It's the brick itself that drops down a further set dimension to rest on the slab edge or the reveal. So how do we split the difference between these walls? Well, let's treat the double brick wall first. That's because that's easy. The entire wall just needs to sit lower. So I'm going to select these three walls and go to the properties window and go base constraint is still ground floor, but the base offset will start -100. Actually, it's just -100 down because that's the step in the garage. So you can see that now that sits nice and flush on the surface of that slab. The brick veneer is a little bit different. We need to click on a brick veneer wall and then go into edit type. I'm going to bring up a preview, and I can see the preview is in section mode, which is great. So we have the brick veneer here, we've got the plasterboard here, and the two green lines are the core boundary of the wall. So I'm then going to go click on edit, and then what's going to happen now is that opens up a bit clearer, and you can see whichever one of these buttons that I'm clicking on, it will highlight, and for me lights up in lime green, so that's my selection color. So if, like the plasterboard finish, if I click on number 6, it highlights that zone. Even the core boundary, if I click on number 3, it's that core boundary of the structural wall, which is the brick veneer, that then shows at highlights. Same with the first one. Now, that's kind of irrelevant right now. That doesn't really matter which one of these I click on. What does matter though, is I want to modify the vertical structure. And I can do this from the section. You can do all sorts of stuff here. You can add sweeps, you can add reveals, you can split walls, you can do a myriad of options. We're just going to work on one. We just want to modify how the vertical structure of this wall can be manipulated. So I'm going to click on modify. Everything sort of goes, nothing's selected. I'm going to hold my mouse over the outer boundary. In other words, I'm going to hold it over the brick veneer component. So I'll click on that, and then I get this little padlock. I'm going to unclick that little padlock there. So you got to hover over it until it turns like gold. Oops. And then click on that, and then you get this unlock symbol like so. Now, what that means, I'll show you. So now that's done, I can just I'll click on modify again. That undoes that command, and that's now complete. And I say OK, and then OK. And to best demonstrate this, let's go to our section. So I'm going to go ground floor plan, click on our section marker, takes us to the section, and then I am going to click on this brick veneer wall, which is the one we just edited. And you'll see now when I click on the wall, I get the two little arrows, two grip arrows. And if I look in the properties window, I have base constraint, then I have the base offset, which is at 0, but there's now a new one that's come up that says base extension distance, and that's both of those are at 0, so that now two parts of the wall can move independently of each other. Whether if I click on the stud wall, you can see base extension distance is grayed out, and I just have the option to just, I can start the wall 150 above the ground floor, or I might start at 150 below the ground floor. It just moves the whole wall all together. But because we've split the vertical structure of the brick veneer wall, the base offset can be one number, but I can click on the base extension, go -150, and that drags down, well actually sorry, it's -100, and that drags down just the brick component of our wall. Now, graphically this looks a little bit weird because this comes across like so and then down. That's because the air gap is like a part of the wall. So what we should do is go into, just for graphical reasons, go back into the wall type, go edit type, structure. It's good practice anyway. Come back into here, click on modify. I'm going to click on the air gap zone and then unpadlock that as well. Okay, like so. Click on modify again to finish off that command. Click OK and OK, and now you'll notice that portion drags down too. Just graphically, that looks a lot cleaner. And now we have the correct methodology of how a brick veneer actually works. Now I can go back to my 3D view, and we can just go here. And what I can do to select this is I can go right click on one of these walls and then say select all instances in the entire project. And that's good because that's all of my brick veneer walls. It's not going to select the garage walls because they're double brick. So that's perfect. So it selects all those brick veneer walls there. And then I can then give that a base extension distance of -100. And that's now updated the model everywhere. So now you got that nice edge finish. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn on my section box in my 3D view. I'm just going to drag this back like so. Oops, I'll drag it back further. And you'll see now, even in 3D, I'll turn off that there. You've got this really nice detail where the timber stud wall is bolted down or fastened down to the slab. You have your plasterboard layer, then you got your air gap here, and then the brick veneer, which sits on the slab edge reveal 100 mm below the floor slab.
Doors and windows can be found under the architecture tab in the ribbon. And you can click on either of the respective icons or the shortcuts for doors as DR and WN for window. We'll start with doors to begin with, and when I click on a door, it will then activate the command. And you'll see that if I'm hovering my mouse over an empty space, I get a circle with a cross through it, the no smoking sign, and what that's indicating is I cannot place a door in this location. Doors are known as hosted families. They need a wall to live within. As soon as I hover over a wall, you'll see that the door appears, the swing appears. In order to place a door, you'll see that Revit will give me some quick dimensions by default, and you can see that there, those blue dimensions. And when I click on a wall, it will then place that door in that location. Revit does the best job it can in that instance to center the door between that wall and that wall. If I hover my mouse over this door, you'll see that Revit kind of snaps to that location again. If I want the door to go in the other direction, I can just hold my mouse further down the wall. So as I move my hand slightly back and forward over the wall, it moves the direction of the door swing. So in this instance, I'll place one there. I'll hit escape twice to exit the command, and then when I click on the door, I can change the swing of that. So if I didn't like the location of that door swing, I can click on this arrow to flip the swing in the other direction, or I could even click on these arrows here to flip it so it's facing outwards. Or I can just hit spacebar on the keyboard to cycle through those different swing directions. The quick dimensions also appear when I click on the door, and I can then click in those dimensions and change the location. So I can say, for instance, I want that 90 mil off of that wall there, or in this instance, I may want to be, maximum 500 off of that wall over there, as an example. Now, in order to change the type of door, I click on the door and then come over to the type selector. And by default in this file, Revit has given us just some single flush doors. And you'll notice the dimension sizes are a little bit odd, and that's because they're a direct swap from, or a direct translation from the imperial system to the metric system. So let's edit one of those doors right now. So we'll take the 813 door and we'll go edit type, and let's rename that door as well to be appropriate. So we'll say 820 by, let's say 2.220 or 2140, and say okay, and then we'll change that. So 2140 high, and the width will be 820, and even under here in the thickness, let's change that to a 35 mil thick door. Okay, and then we'll say all right, okay, and then those update accordingly. And you see the door also got thinner as well, the door leaf itself. So now we'll go through and place these in the correct location, because at the moment I've just placed them in those two locations. So I can go ahead and I can delete that. That's fine. I'm going to change this to wireframe mode, so I can see the plan underneath. And then let's go again. So DR for door, and I'm just going to start placing these into place. And I can, as I'm hovering my hand over the wall, I can just hit spacebar to keep flicking those around. And I'll hold my hand over here. Okay, that's one door placed. There's one under the stair as well. And leave the front door for the time being, because that's a different type of door we're going to utilize. Okay, that's all our doors for our ground floor. And then the process works the same upstairs. So DR for door. There's one for either bedroom. That's a bathroom, I think. Okay, so on and so forth. So I'll let you go through that process. Now I'm going to turn this back. I'm going to go back to the ground floor, turn this back into hidden line mode, and just click on these doors just to confirm their sizes. So I want to make sure that I'm rational here and leave some space. So I'm going to leave at least 90 mil at the back of the door. And that one's 80 mil either side. That's fine because Revit has centered it for me. And that's all good. And these the laundry door, give that 100 behind. That's 100. And that's 200. That's fine. All right, so now that's fine for doors for now. We'll touch on these doors in greater detail as we go along. But next up is how we load in a roller door, for instance. So we need a door that isn't currently inside of the Revit file. So I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go DR for door, and then I'm going to click on this icon here in the ribbon. It says load family, and then I'm going to go back. This is where we loaded that concrete beam before. So I'll go back to the Australian category of families and click on doors. And then you can see in here, there is a bunch in here by default. So, double 4-panel door, 2-panel, double flush, offset, which is good. That's like a unequal door.
double flush, and there's just a bunch here, glass doors, there's a whole lot. But the one I'm interested in is an overhead rolling door, or actually overhead sectional door. So I'm going to click open, and then I'm going to be able to place that door. So I'm going to place that right there in the garage. Actually, I'm going to flip that over so it looks something like that. And then we need to change that size. So relatively speaking, how wide's the 3.8? So maybe, let me just double check the reference model. 2340 by 3. Okay, so let's go back to here and let's edit that. So I'll click on this door, edit type, and rename 2300 by 3 meters. And let's change this family accordingly. So height 2300 and width 3 meters. Say okay. And that's now updated. Now, if I want to change that to be in the center of this of the garage, I can go to my dimension tool, click this side of the wall, hover my mouse over the center of the door, and I'll get this little reference line that appears. When you'll see the CL will appear to note that I've got the center line. And then I'm going to go over to this brick wall here because that's the closest thing that a car will hit. So I'll click on that, then click over here, and then click this little equals button, and what will happen is it moves the garage door to be perfectly in between those 2 points, those 2 reference points. So that now works really well. Now doors work a lot like walls and whatnot, where you have like a sill height associated to it. And the reason why I bring that up is because if we go to the 3D view, you'll see that this garage door is sort of floating up in space. Not really floating in space, but it's sitting above a brick area. And that's because the garage slab is 100 mil set down. So we need to click on that overhead sectional door and go minus 100 to bring that back down. And we can amend the materials on these doors as well. You can see as well around here, we have our door that's seated here, but we don't have any finishes for them as of yet. When nothing's selected in my 3D view, I'm going to come over to my properties window and click on the tick box here that says section box. When I do that, I get this black box that appears, and I can click on it and just drag the grips around to create 3-dimensional sections. So when I drag this down, it cuts through the building, and I can cut through to the ground level like so. It acts kind of like a clipping plane, but in all dimensions, like in Rhino. So I'm going to click on one of these doors and right click. Well, firstly, I'm going to click on one of these doors. Well, we just noticed that these doors are not to Australian standard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go DR for door, load family, and in here I'm going to load a single steel frame door. There is a timber frame door as well, but for some reason out of the box Revit, the timber doors, the Australian ones, need modification. They don't actually show correctly. So I'm going to use the steel frame door. So I'm going to say okay, and I'll just place one in one area, like so. But what I am going to do is right click on one of these doors and say select all instances in the whole project and change that to my steel frame door. So you'll see that here, single, 720, 820, 920, etc. So I'm going to change them all to 820, and then I'm just going to delete this door here, and then I'll go back to my ground floor plan. And I might just need to flip these over. In fact, I'll need to flip them all over to the other direction. That one's okay. Yep, that goes the other way. That opens into the garage. And that one's okay. All right. And then do the same thing on the first floor as well. So these are much more realistic to what is actually being constructed. And we've actually got frames as well. In those standard flush doors, we don't have frames that come with them. Also, these all these dimensions are standardized. Now, we're going to leave materials for the time being. But what we are going to do is take a look. Let's take a look in 3D. And okay, that looks all pretty good. So what we're going to work on now is the windows. So taking a look at the reference image, we've got a bunch of windows here. So we have a 3-panel window, one fixed, 3-panel window. So immediately I can tell you that that's one type of family. Now let's call that family type A. That's family type A. That's family type B, and then there'll be other ones around the project which will be standardized as well.
And that's the good thing about parametric families, is that you can use the one type of family, and provided they have the parameters built into them to change their height, width, length, depth, whatever it may be, they will give you firstly very varied options, and secondly means that if you make changes to one, you can make changes to multiple at once, saving you an enormous amount of time. So going back into Revit, I'm going to come over to my floor plan, and I'm again going to turn that into wireframe mode so I can just see the windows behind my floor plan. And I haven't got too many down here. And you'll find on Student Web, you've got a folder available to download which houses these A and L windows and door families, which we're going to utilize. And these are great references. Now, Revit does have standard windows built into it by default, but they're terrible. They're not very good. These ones are suited to our needs. So let's start, for instance, with... let's start with the 3 panel. So I'm going to click on that. I'm just going to double click on that. That's going to open the family inside of Revit, and it's going to prompt you to upgrade the model. Now, whether it doesn't matter which version you're using, you just say upgrade the model, no harm done. That'll take a few seconds to do. And once that's done, it opens up the family itself. So I'm not too interested in this area. That's totally fine. What I am going to do is click on this button here that says load into project and close. Choose the project, which is this one for today. And I can start entering that into our model. So again, I'm just going to hover my mouse over somewhere around here. I don't really care where. That's number 1. And then I'm going to go up to level 1, and I'm going to go WN for window, and I'm just going to place it here as well, because I know that there's one around here, this location in the first floor. I'm then going to go back to my File Explorer. Let's take the fixed window. Now I think one okay, so I think one, I can't remember which one's what. I will find out when we're in 3D, but the reason why there's B, S, and LW or something like that, I think it has to do with the sill that's available. Yeah, that's it. So this one has a timber sill, a brick sill, the other one does not. That's why you'll see there's 2 of the same. So there's 2 singles and there's 3 panels. So I did that incorrectly before, but that's okay. Load into project. So okay, this one is going to go on the ground floor. So I'll just place that there. I don't really care where, and I can see it's around the wrong way, so I can click on that window and I can hit spacebar and flick that over so the brick sill's outside. Again, that's totally fine for now. Let's continue on. That's the brick one. So let's take the 2. So the 2 will be very helpful. So the 2 panel one are particularly the ones that go in the bedrooms. So I'll upgrade that. Load that straight into the project. So you can see the architraving that goes on the inside. Okay, and then come up to here. And I can't remember exactly where they are on this level, but I'll just start plugging those in. Now, I'm just going to place these into all the walls, and once they're in the walls, we'll then take a look at how to adjust them and dimension those up. Okay, so with majority of the doors and windows now placed, I'm just going to finish this off. So I'm going to come up to level 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these windows. I'm going to go CS to create similar. And I'll create one of these in the final bedroom. And you'll notice too, similar with the doors, that Revit creates these quick dimensions, and we'll try and help you out by equaling them out within the room. So you see here 31 or 1.301 meters as an example. So it will help you with that. But then again, when you click on the window, you can quick dimension it. So you might say, I want this to be 500 off of this wall, and it will move the window appropriately. But what we do have to do now is start cleaning up these windows so they're the right size and appear at the right level. Okay, so with all the windows placed, I've gone to 3D to help us sort of rectify and amend these correctly, because they all just come in with generic sizes and with generic materials. So let's work our way around the building. So first one here, this front awning window, I'm going to go edit type, and we're going to edit the size. So I'm going to go rename, and this one is going to be 2200 high by 2100 wide. Go OK,
And those adjustments are there. That's good. That's already done, so that's fine. And then the sill height is going to be 100. So it's going to sit above 100 mil, like so. This one here is way too wide, so we're going to amend this one as well. So I'm going to go to here, rename, and this one is going to be 2200 by 600 high. And we'll make that amendment. So 2200 high, 600 width, and you'll see that updates, and I can just drag that to where I want, and then I'll give it the right sill height, so 100 mil sill height, and then we'll go into plan, and then we'll amend where these sit in terms of offsets from walls. These over here, I think these sit just fine. They're fine for now, but we have to amend their materials and also their locations. So that's it for the ground floor. I'll click on the section box and just drag this up for our first floor. All right, so let's go through that again. So this one, this time, this is one without a brick sill, but we still need to rename that. So this time, that one, what is that one? That one is 1600 high by 600 millimeters wide. So height, 1600, width, 600. Okay, and then the sill height for that one, what is the sill height? 700? Something like that. Okay, and then the bedroom, let's go here. That one should be renamed. That should be 1600 high by 21 wide. And should also have a sill of 700. So these two windows sit in the same location. You can see that there. That looks pretty good. Okay. Now the bedroom window. So this window here is for the toilet. Let's fix that one up first. That one should only be this one's a duplicate, so we're not going to just rename it because this one's still a fixed and we already have the 1600 by 600. So we're going to click on duplicate and call this one 600 by 600 mil and then make the appropriate change. Okay, and then that has a sill height of I think 1700. There we go. And now for the bedroom. So if you've got something like this, I flicked that around the wrong way. That architrave should be on the other side. So I just click on spacebar to flip that over like so. That's better. And the bedroom windows, what are they going to be? They are 16. Let's go edit type. What sizes are they given? Close. So the height will be 1600 and then 810 is fine. Or we might just change it to 1800 just to use round numbers. And I'll make sure I rename that so I can see that in the name. So 1600 by 1800. And say okay. That then updates. And that sill is going to be much lower. Okay. Let me just double check my reference model. Okay, so it's misnamed, so it should only be 1000 high, and it's sitting at a 1300 sill. That does make actually a lot more sense. And rename that appropriately. And 1300. Perfect. Okay, the rest of those update around the other side too, but the bathroom one needs to be slightly smaller, I think, or we will just change it up a little bit. So let's go edit type, and we'll say duplicate because this we don't want to change this one because it's being used for the bedroom. So we'll say duplicate, and this time let's give it a height of 1100 and a width this time of 1600, and then remove the 2, and then let's change that 1100, 1600, and then we would need to set this down to to 1000, drop that down. Oh, sorry, the other way. Yep, there we go. Okay. So that looks good now. Those windows are all the right size and they're flipped around the right way. Notice we still haven't got the front door yet, but we do have our back sliding doors and the rest of our doors. What I'll do is I'll go to ground floor, and this is when we need to rationalize this. Now, it's up to you on how you want to rationalize this, but what I'd be suggesting is just using some common sense dimensions. So, and trying to even this up as best as possible. So we know that we have a breakfast bench here, and we know that we've got these gaps between here. So you can see the CAD drawing underneath, and we can always overlay that. So I can change this to wireframe mode. We can see our doors over the top of the doors there, our windows over the top of their windows, like the original design. So we can play around with that, but I reckon we could rationalize this ourselves as well. The process is the same, like no matter how you want to do this. So what I'm going to do is take this window just here. I'm going to go to dimension. I'm going to go from this brick wall to that feature brick wall, and then click, hover my mouse over the middle of the window until I get the center point, and then just click somewhere in space, and then again hit equals equals, and now this window ends up being equal distance from this nib to this feature wall just here. Same with this one here. I can go bang, center point, and then I can go the external, but I probably wouldn't, because then it will, let's see how that looks, but I think it may make it too close to this wall just here. And I think it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go from between this point to here, and then make it even there. Okay. Now, if I click on that dimension and delete it, it's going to come up with this warning saying a dimension that has EQ constraints has been deleted, but the elements will still be constrained. Push unconstrained to remove the constraints, or OK to leave the elements constrained. What that means is if I click like OK and I move this wall, it's going to move. It will move the window to be updated to be halfway between this point and this point here. Otherwise, you can hit unconstrained and it won't do it. To be honest, I generally just hit unconstrained, because that way you may lose track of what is and isn't, I guess, constraint. So if I do that one again, delete that dimension, and I just click unconstrained. That's usually just a habit that I use. So those two are now rationalized. This one over here may take a little bit longer just to sort of work out. So you have 400 there. I'm just dimensioning these openings back to this wall. And you could do something like, for instance, okay, well, I want, maybe I want 600 here, and I want a gap of 900 there, and maybe I want a gap of 900 there too. So you could end up with something like that. I mean, we can continue to move these around at a later stage. So there's no right or wrong here. I might just leave that as is. And as we mature our design, we might decide to change that a little bit. Now, same with our bathroom, for instance. So that has updated this window here. So we can do the same thing again. So dimension, wall, center of window, wall, click, and then click the EQs to center that window back up. And then I'll delete the dimension and hit unconstrain. Same for this bedroom window over here, so I'll do the same thing. Once, make sure I hit the wall, center point of window, that wall, hit equals, nice. I'll delete that and unconstrain. Same with the bathroom window, that's the toilet. Excellent. Now with these ones here, this window here, we've got another methodology that we could possibly use. We can try that out. I'm going to just dimension this one. Wall. So this is in the walk-in robe on the first floor. Okay, that's now dimensioned, and then this one in the bedroom's the last one. Now, I've just wanted to make, like I said, I just wanted to equal these, but you could do them another way. You could say, oh, well, again, we want this to be, 900 off of this wall, and then whatever's left over is left over, because that's the design of the room that we want. You can do that too. It's up to you. I'm just using the equals sign as just as a system. But in fact, let's change that one up. Let's say that, let's say I want this one 600 off of this back wall. like that, because the bed might be over here, and then this space is like an open space without any window there, as an example. Okay, so that is done. Actually, in fact, you can see the window is placed further back this way. That's my bad. So let's go the other way. Let's say it's 600 off of this wall, like that. All right, so let's go back to 3D. Looks good. That looks great. Okay. Last thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this window and this window up. And I'm going to go into my 3D view and go AL on my keyboard. And I'm going to hit Tab on my keyboard so I find the opening of that wall or that window. I'll click on that so now it's surface highlights. And then I'll hover my mouse over this window and then click, and then that shifts that window across. And because those two windows are the same dimension, you end up with something that looks like that. That looks really nice and neat and tidy. Okay, excellent. Now just a few other housekeeping items. So I'm going to go back to level 1 and let's just manipulate these doors a little bit more. So all these doors are 820 currently, but the one in the toilet, we're going to change that to a 720. That's the first thing. So now that updates to a 720 door in the toilet. That's great. The next thing is we want to add one more door. So I'm going to go DR and load family. And I'm going to click on structural and then door opening and then click open. And what this is you can see these walk-in robes don't actually have doors. They just have openings. So I'm going to click once there. I'm going to click once there. And I think there's another walk-in robe just there. And these are now just openings in the wall. So if I go to my 3D view and click on my section box and drop that down. Okay. You'll see now that those openings appear like that. So they're still classified as a door. You can see there in the properties window, it's still classified as a door, but it's just an opening. There's no door associated to it. Again, I can clean that up at a later stage. So there's one there. Oh, sorry, that's an ensuite. So that needs to be a door. That's my mistake. So I can just change that. I'll click on that, change that to an 820 steel door. And I'll bring that back down to here, like so. Because I think that's a shower over there. Yes, it is. Perfect. That's still an opening. That's still an opening. Perfect. And I can just click on that and clean that up. It's 100. I'll make that 90. One studs width. And same here. I'll do the same. I'll make that 90. Or is that centered? Oh, it's on the other side. Okay, so that's fine. I'm going to use my align tool, AL for align. I'll hover my hand over this wall here and then click on that side of the opening, and then that makes that opening flush with the edge of that wall. So that's nice. That's good. Let's check that in 3D. Yep, perfect. That looks good. All right. And next up, let's just double check. Go DR, load family. Do we have some sliding doors in here by default? Not sure. 2-panel sliding. That's not exactly what we want. That's okay. If not, we can add those doors. Yeah, we don't. We'll add those doors at a later stage because we want actual robe sliding doors, which are not like glass sliding doors. Okay, now, while I'm here, what I will do is we'll start materializing these windows up. So I just want to reference the example. Okay, so they're all timber framed. Okay, so I'll click on this window to begin with, and I'll go edit type. And then we'll check in the type properties. We have all these materials here. So these windows are actually pretty comprehensive in terms of what materials are available. So the glass is as is, but let's click on that material. And this glass material is probably applied to all of the glass because they're all the same manufacturer. The families are all from the same company. So we can change that. So I'm going to change that to a black color. Say OK and bring the opacity down to like say 70%. And I'll click OK. I might give it a second to update. So I'm not renaming it. I'm not making a new glass. I'm just adjusting the glass that's already there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because that material is applied to all of the other families too. So it will really save a lot of time. Now let's keep going. So framing material is timber finish. And that is fine. That's fine. What I will do is I'm going to give that to all of them. So timber finish, architrave, the reveal. I'm going to give that the same timber finish. So I'm going to click on timber finish. And then the reveal, I'll give it the same. Timber finish. Okay, yep. Glass, yep. And the masonry brick, I'm going to come to here. We actually want to change that, but we want to match the color to our beige brick. So I'm just going to type that in. So that number for myself, I've written down the RGB value. So I know that that matches my facade brick. And I'll change that to make sure it's the same gray as well. So I'll go OK, and then OK again, and you'll probably see a bunch of windows will update. Okay, so that's good. So that has updated. Yep, that looks good. But this window, this frame here, I want to change. That. Let's go into this one. The reveal, I'll make a timber finish. And just to make it easier, I'm going to go to timber finish because that's what I picked on before. So I say timber finish, but I'm just going to rename that so it's very clear that it's mine. So I'm just going to use my initials as a prefix. I'm not making a new material, just renaming it. So I know that it's PM timber finish that I want to keep seeing. Why wouldn't it let me do that? Let's just try it one more time. Where is it? Oh yeah, there it is. Timber finish. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, cool. That. Reveal material. PM, timber finish. The sill, we want to make sure it's the same sill. Yep, that's fine. Glass. Framing material, not the white powder coat. Let's go down to, we want to find PM underscore. Now the reason why you have all these different materials is because the family itself will have these parameters associated to certain objects and not others. That's why there's so many here. I'll update that. Okay, that looks good. That's done. But on the inside, you'll notice now, so if I just cut the section the other way, so let's cut back into the living room and look from the inside, we have that brown timber finish on the inside where you may not actually want that to be. You may want that to be white on the inside, and it will depend on whether this material here is a different material to the other side or not. For the time being, I'm just going to leave that all as timber, and I'm going to continue this throughout the rest of the project. So I'll need to go into this window next, go into edit type, and make sure that all of these, or anything that was like, you know, MDF or brown paint dark or something like that, or aluminium coated white, I'm going to change that all just to PM underscore timber finish just for consistency. And I'll continue to do that for all of the families until they're all the same. So you can see that's now updated as well, just so we get that consistent look. And finally, I've loaded in the front door as well, pasted that into the ground floor, and then just rationalized its location. Just note, because this door does have a side light, that when you go to dimension it and equal it in this door opening area, so from this point, say, to this point here, you might hold your mouse over the center point of the door and you will get that that reference plane, but it's actually the center point of the entire unit, which is just off to the side, and that's what you need to center for that that door and that side light. I'm going to create our floor finishes zones. So I'm going to go up to the architecture tab and click on floors and then go floor architectural. We're going to create new types. So I'm going to go edit type and I'm going to click on duplicate and I'm going to type in the name of this new floor. So in this instance, we're going to have 3 finishes zones. You're going to have carpet zones, timber flooring, and tile. So I'm going to start with the code for this one. So timber floorboards, so TFL 01 underscore timber
floorboards and edit the structure. So add in another layer. They can both sit within the core boundary. And so this will be a finish. This will be a substrate. The finish is going to be a timber flooring. So I need to create that too. So new type, new flooring, right click, rename, TFL01, timber flooring, or timber floorboards really. And then the appearance, I'm just going to give it a timberish sort of color. I don't really care what. It's up to you. Okay. The foreground pattern will be a model pattern and it will just be 100 mil horizontal. I'll change that to vertical if I need to later, but I'll just start with actually 150 mil horizontal. I'll make that a light gray. That hatch, that looks all good. Yep, no problem. Okay, and then the underlay. So this will just be a underlay material. So go create new, right click, rename. I'm just going to call this underlay, and I don't need a code because I'm not going to schedule it out, but I will make it like a bluish type of color, something like that. No cut associated to it, that's fine. And I'll give that 8 mil, and the timber I'll give 12 for a total of 20 mil. So it looks something like that. In fact, for the timber, I might just give that a cross hatch as well. So in here, I'll give it a X hatch. What's the smallest cross hatch we have? We may need to create a new one. So diagonal cross hatch, let's duplicate this. Call this diagonal cross hatch, and we'll do it at 1 mil. Okay, so create our own. Yep, all good. Yep, something like that. Cool, so it looks something like that. Okay, and okay. Now, to draw this, we are currently drawing on the ground floor at 0 offset. Now, that's fine, but you're going to see what happens when I do that. So what we need to do now is, this will take some time. You need to carefully, very carefully, draw around the boundary of your walls. So this is the open living area. So I'm going to draw around the plasterboard, and I'm going to follow this around the whole way. And you can see that this will take time because I'm going to need to draw around here. And this is why we did the doors first, because we need to go around the openings for the doors as well, like so, because there will be there'll be floorboards in the pantry. So you'll end up drawing this like so, even inside this linen cupboard. And if I do miss a spot, or if I get that wrong, I'll need to go back and align and lock it to the right location. And what you can see at the end of it is something that looks like this. And when I select that timber flooring and I isolate it, you can see how intricate that that outline is, going in and out between and under around walls and under doors and through door openings or whatnot. You can see that's the kitchen area into the pantry. You can see how I've overlapped that. Areas like underneath the staircase for an under staircase storage, and so on and so forth. But it's very intricate, but it needs to be so we get accurate analytical information or reporting parameters such as area and perimeter dimensions. And so when I bring that back, I've even done my tile areas. So if I click on that, and what I'll do is I'll select my slab and I'll isolate all three. And you can see how that looks. So there's the slab. Here's our tiled zones. I've done the same thing, and our floorboard zone. So it ends up being quite intricate. But you can see, because the amount of area that there is still concrete slab, there's a huge discrepancy in the amount of area. So it's really important that you model this very cleanly, really tight modeling there, because that's what will allow you to get reliable quantities out of your model. So even if so when clicking on the tiles, so I got TIL01 tile floor, edit type, and that is made up of a 10 or an 8 mil tile with a 12 mil concrete underlay, or what you call a screed area. And then I'm gonna
bring everything back and just drag this up, and I've done the same for our carpeted zone. So I'll move this up, and we have carpet in the bedrooms, and the carpet's made up CPT01, and that's made up of again I think that's a 10 mil underlay, 10 mil carpet zone, just with a dark carpet material with a just a dot hatch, a sand hatch on top of that, on top of a dark colored carpet. But you can choose whatever finish you want, or in your other class you might have a type of material that's specified, work to that, but otherwise the process is the same. But again, if we look at that, if I isolate these floors, and then let me just try and grab, I'm just going to grab, there we go, and isolate that. This is the first floor, so you can see the tongue and groove that's here in the lighter color, then the areas for the carpet, the timber flooring, and the tiles, and you can see how they even meet underneath the doors, like how they join around the transition between two types of flooring. This was a comprehensive workshop covering a wide range of architectural and structural modeling techniques and workflows, including all the items listed here. By the next workshop, you should be up to date with all of the content delivered up until here, meaning short of making adjustments to suit construction or material selection requirements, around 90% of the base building is now covered.